Welcome to the Indie Film NYC podcast, where we help filmmakers merge the art and business of independent filmmaking. And I'm your host, John Fallon. Welcome to the second episode of the Indie Film NYC podcast. Today, I'm talking with Scott Fivelson about his film, Near Myth, the Oskar Knight Story. So while doing some research online, I found Scott's film on Twitter, and it caught my attention because of the subject matter of classic Hollywood. The film is a mockumentary, but it comes off with a story that you'll relate to if you've ever followed an actor, director, or producer that you think should have won an Academy Award, but year after year, even though they have great work, they fall short and they don't win that Oscar. Names like Spielberg, Scorsese, and DiCaprio come off the top of my head. But content aside, what I found fascinating about Scott Fivelson is that he really teaches a lesson by example, that if you're going to be an indie filmmaker, the biggest disadvantage that you will have is your marketing cannot compete with big studios who can put millions of advertising dollars behind their films to reach the widest audience possible. So the first thing you have to do is put a lot of thought and effort into both identifying and reaching out to the audience that you feel your film will resonate with. And it's best to start that practice as early as you can, even before the film is in production. But like Scott, what will also really help you, the filmmaker, is being the biggest champion for your film. Knowing it inside and out, talking about it, finding ways for people to watch your film theatrically, whether it's at film festivals or public screenings that you set up. Then, when someone shows an interest in the film, make sure you're ready to provide them with access to yourself and any promotional materials that you have, so if they want to interview you for, say, a podcast, a taped interview, a magazine article, or even a blog post, you'll be ready to go without delay. Because if someone shows an interest in you and your story, if you make them wait while you gather materials together, you may miss your window. Because like the quote says, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. So without further ado, here's my interview with Scott Fivelson. Why don't you give us a little bit of your background? Who is Scott Fivelson?
Well, a question I ask myself every day. But the more significant question these days is who was Oskar Knight? And of course, Oskar Knight is the subject of the film I just wrote and directed. And I was thinking about how to describe it to you today when we were talking. Well, you know, the film is a mockumentary, but I think I'd like to think the difference between this and some mockumentaries is oftentimes you hear about a mockumentary that was done on a weekend. You know, somebody will say like, oh yeah, we grabbed the camera and ran out and we did a mockumentary this weekend. And they don't just mean a short film, they mean like a whole feature. So this wasn't done in a weekend, this was done in 5 years. Not every day, but at intervals as different things that we needed came into place. This was worked on a long time. It was quite the epic film, telling an epic story. So it is a mockumentary, but I'd like to think it's a bit more than that. It's because it's witty and nostalgic and poignant. I mean, it's a comedy, but it touches on a lot of emotions, all of the emotions that are touched on by a long directing career, like an Orson Welles had, like a John Huston had. Because Oskar Knight, you know, he had that kind of career. He was like an Orson Welles and John Huston. So our film, which is called Near Myth, the Oskar Knight Story, and that's spelled like a name because it was his name, Oskar Knight, not to be confused with Oscar Knight. Like, you know, you're looking forward to Oskar Knight. He was always looking forward to it, though he was nominated and he lost again and again and again. And one person said to me, you know, your film's like a thriller. It's like a mystery story. Like, is Oskar Knight ever going to win the Oscar? And, you know, you can go and Google and try to find out, like, did he ever win? You know, Wikipedia probably has it. But you got to see the film. I mean, to really get the impact of the end of that question. Like, did he win? You know, and what did it mean to him to wait all those years? So I'd like to think when Leo DiCaprio finally sees our film, he's going to be going like, oh, that's my story, you know.
So tell me a little bit about, you said, you know, you basically made this over the course of 5 years. Were you writing the entire time, or how did that affect the film, you know, such a long process?
Well, actually, it's interesting. I mean, I've had 4 screenplays produced. I mean, so have identified myself primarily as a writer up until the last few years. Then I started producing some of what I was writing, And then Near Myth, the Oskar Knight Story, I was writer, main producer, and then the director. So now I'm a writer-director.
Mm-hmm.
Turning down offers left and right, because I want to do my own stuff. So, of course, if 20th Century Fox is listening, what's your email? Anyhow, so how did it affect things? Well, the next film I do, I'm sure will probably be on a normal kind of schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's 18 days or 30 days or 3 months or whatever it is, it's going to be 5 or 6 days a week. And we had some occasional weeks like that. But the great thing about this, such as the editing. Okay, so 3 years into this was shot, and we spent about 2 years editing it. Again, not every day. We're not that slow, but we would edit at these little intervals between my editor's other jobs. And actually, my editor is like he was the compadre on all this. His name is David Pulcino, and David was the main cinematographer. We did have some other people shoot some other second unit, but he was main cinematographer. He was the main editor, and also ultimately one of the producers. And the way it happens with indie films is sometimes people are taking other jobs in between. So he'd be editing his other things, and then it's like, okay, time to edit again. We went through some periods where we edited every day, but sometimes it'd be once a week, sometimes twice a week. Sure. But the key is the space between doing what we would do when we would shoot with days in between or weeks in between or edit. It gave you all this time for things to percolate. Mm-hmm. So you could be, I'd be living my life and then suddenly see something in the news or out on the street or whatever, and you suddenly have an idea. And if you'd shot the film in 18 days, you'd be 6 months too late to integrate it into your film. But here, like Dave and I, at a certain point, we ended up saying, this isn't a film with a deadline, it's a lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Making this film is just a lifestyle with no deadline. We just what do? We just make this film. So the fact that you'd be living and breathing and doing all your stuff and making the movie, things could come into your life that could suddenly be these wonderful little revelations to add, whether it was more still pictures of Hollywood or you just learned something about John Huston or Vincent Minnelli that could become another character trait that fits into sort of, illuminating Oscar's life. Mm-hmm. So giving time, I guess it's the opposite of like soap operas. There's no time to do anything.
Right.
And Dustin Hoffman has a great quote that I've read, of his many great quotes. It was something like, making a film is like painting a portrait set up on a train track with a locomotive coming. So here, it was like that, but with no locomotive.
Sure.
and no train service. So we weren't afraid about getting hit by a train or much of anything. And we just kept, up our lifestyle of making Near Myth, the Oskar Knight Story. And now it's done, and we're all really like sad, but now having fun promoting it. But it was so much fun to work on.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it. So you're saying that the script it evolved, and it evolved naturally as you went through the process.
Well, okay, so the script, I wrote the script a couple of years before we even started making the film, and, went through, different drafts of it, and then finally it was like, okay, this is what we're going to shoot. This is ready to go. But the thing to know about Near Myth, the Oskar Knight Story is, okay, being in documentary form, falling under, it's a narrative fiction piece, but in documentary form, it includes all of the things that you'd expect from a documentary on the life of a great filmmaker. Mm-hmm. I loved films that I had seen, like George Stevens, A Filmmaker's Journey, John Huston, the movies The Maverick. These are great, great films. So I would watch these and many others and be inspired. And after a while, you realize the different tissue that goes into these things. There's the clips from the old movies, from the classic movies that these directors made. There were interviews with people who knew them, pro and con, the people who loved them, the people who knew their tribulations and all that sort of thing. And then you had usually lots of still photos, sometimes songs and posters. So these films become a real treasure chest of, memory and souvenir about these directors. So that's how, I tried to incorporate all those elements, including many interviews. Now, when I first wrote this, I'm sitting there with no budget hampering me. So I'm thinking, who would I like to have talk about Oskar Knight, who might have something to say? So I wrote an interview for, Martin Scorsese.
Mm-hmm.
He's there in New York with you. If you run into him, you could tell him, hey, you should have done Scott's movie. No, we never spoke. I would have spoken. But anyways, so Martin Scorsese, I wrote an interview for, Sean Connery, Michael Caine, all these people. And then you finish the script, and then you go, okay, who can we get?
Right.
And talk to certain agents and people, and they'll be going like, well, no, I don't think Sean will be doing this. They'll say, what's your budget? And then you'll tell them the budget, and they'll go, so you want, you'll tell them the budget, and you'll say, is that your offer for Sean? And you'll say, no, that's the whole budget. And they'll say, that's not even like 1/10 of an offer for Sean for 1 hour, on a day when he's not playing golf.
Mm-hmm.
So it was either like, disguise yourself as his caddy and try to like interview him on the links, or forget,
right.
Goodbye to Sean Connery. Yes, she should have done it.
So did you work around that with, did you have kind of stand-ins for those types of interviews, or how did you work
Don't tell my cast that.
How did you work around that, though?
Do not tell actor Paul Gregory that he was only a stand-in for Sean Connery. Actually, Paul Gregory does a better Sean Connery imitation than Sean Connery does. Paul is a brilliant British actor. He was actually part of Kenneth Branagh's sort of acting repertory group on film. He was in Hamlet as not Hamlet, sorry. He was in Henry V as Westmoreland. He stands there right by the cart when Branagh's standing up giving his St. Crispin speech, and that's Paul like waving a stick and ready to fight the French, And then he was in Frankenstein that Branagh directed. He was actually directed by Laurence Olivier in a play by J.B. Priestley. Now he lives in L.A. these days, but for years Paul was a staple of the British community. So, anyways, he does great impressions. He knew these guys. He's known Anthony Hopkins and
sure.
And he's met all these guys, so he does great impressions. He stepped in. And actually, the thing with Paul is he does 3 roles. He was like our Terry Thomas or our Peter Sellers. He is interviewed as himself, talking about his relationship with Oskar Knight as a stage actor, with Oskar Knight as a director. Then he did a voice of a husband calling from heaven in the Oskar Knight clip from the Heaven to Betsy, which is a great movie, Heaven to Betsy. And then finally he does a voice that is simply called Scottish Acting Icon on the IMDb, but it's supposed to be Sean Connery. So it's a voice, and you never see the speaker, and he's addressing a group of students, acting students, listening to a speech. So that's,
right.
ostensibly Sean talking to an acting troupe about, his experiences, with Oskar Knight. So in that way, we have a kind of ghost of Sean in the film. But anyways, so yeah, we had a lot of people step in, and I mean, there were some actors I knew who I'd worked with before. Because it's a great cast, John, and if I may say, I think it compares very well to a lot of films at this budget on the IMDb in terms of cast. The budget for the film is $125,000.
Mm-hmm.
Could still go up a little. There may still be a little money poured into publicity and such,
sure.
But essentially that's the budget. The film's complete. So, anyways, so that is the budget. But we got Joaquin de Almeida, who has been in Clear and Present Danger, Desperado. He's the brother that Antonio Banderas is trying to kill.
Right.
He's in Fast 5 with Vin Diesel, and told me some great stories about Vin and Paul Walker from when he worked on that. And then he was on a season of 24. Joaquin's just like the ultimate great European actor from Portugal. So I'd worked with him in a film called 3 Holes in a Smoking Gun, which we could talk about a little bit at some point too. So he's wonderful. Joaquin is just great. We have Oscar winner Margaret O'Brien. Mm-hmm. Now, I knew that I wanted to try to get at least one Oscar winner in this film, since the great through line of the story is, will Oscar Knight ever win an Oscar? So even before we find out whether he ever did or not, I wanted somebody who had won one to be able to speak about it. So I got very lucky, and Laurie Jacobson, who's Margaret's manager, got in touch with her for me, and Margaret was game to do it. And Margaret won her Oscar when she was 6 years old, opposite Judy Garland in Meet Me in St. Louis. So, I mean, she's just had such an incredible career, and she was great. She talks, I mean, she tells stories in our film about, like, pals like Clark Gable. So that's one of the really fun things about the movie. It really spans the entire history of Hollywood, all the way up to the present. And, I mean, I think it's, for people who love classic Hollywood, we have so many old photos. What's his name? I should remember his name. Mark Wanamaker's his name. And Mark is an archivist who worked on Chinatown, LA Confidential, Gangster Squad. And when I approached him about helping on this film, he was so thrilled that anybody still cared, as he put it, about like the history of Hollywood, that he brought his Bison Archives library of photos to me and said, use what you like.
Yeah, no, that was one of the fascinations that I had with the film, was that, there's so much, classic Hollywood in it. And so I wanted to know, like, how you got that look. And, so this is great. I mean,
what a lot of you probably noticed, I mean, if you follow, anybody who follows Hollywood history at all, there's certain photos everybody's seen, but this has a lot of photos that I have rarely been seen. I mean, they're part of the Bison Archives, but unless you're, sitting there in the Bison dungeon, paging through the pictures, most of these, they're not online all the time. So you've got some very, very rare pictures, and because of David Pulcino's absolute magician work as an editor, we have shots of Oscar Knight drinking with Errol Flynn, laughing with Gary Cooper, because he knew these guys. These were his buds, back then. The way Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, hang together today, apparently inseparable, and always will be. Oscar Knight was, Gary Cooper, Tyrone Power, Rita Hayworth. These were the people he hung with, and you see that in this film. And I should also mention, because I haven't mentioned him yet, Lenny Von Dolen plays Oscar Knight, and Lenny is one of the best actors of his generation. Anybody who knows him from Tender Mercies, Jennifer 8, American Playhouse, Electric Dreams, he's just like one of the best going, and we got really lucky that Lenny agreed to play Oscar Knight. He didn't know a lot about him at first, but he learned.
So, what kind of audience were you guys targeting when you were making this film? Were you like, who's this movie for?
Well, I think everybody, as every filmmaker should say, everyone with a smartphone, an app, a computer, a TV set, smoke signals. It's really for everyone. But if then as a publicist, they would, of course, go like, "What's your niche? What's your niche? Sure. Don't tell me everyone. No film is for everyone." Well, this one is. So the niches. Actually, I think it is a multi-nicheable film, Near Myth, the Oscar Knight Story, which is on the IMDb and has a Facebook page, Near Myth, the Oscar Knight Story. Please visit us and like us.
Sure, yeah, and I'll put links to all that stuff in the show notes.
Yes, hope so. Link us, message us, write to us. We love to hear from our fans. And, I mean, there's a lot going on with the film right now that I will talk about. But, obviously, anybody who it falls into two categories in a way in this niche. Anybody who loves classic Hollywood, the golden age of Hollywood, or anybody who doesn't know much about it but is fascinated about it and is trying to learn more. Because I've had people who said, I didn't know who half the people were in your film, and I love that because now I'm looking them up on Google. Right. I mean, seriously, I'm looking them up. I'm reading about them. Yeah. I want to rent a film with Margaret O'Brien. I want to rent a film, that Orson Welles was in. So, there's a kind of educational aspect to this. I mean, there probably is a straight out educational aspect, but I mean, it's a popularizing aspect. It's like, let's look at some of what we've forgotten.
Right.
You know, let's look at some of what nobody's even being taught anymore. You know, unless they're in a freshman class at USC of film history. So, fans of classic film and those who want to revisit classic Hollywood, film buffs, cinema buffs, anybody European. I mean, this film talks about when Oskar Knight went to Europe, because his career wasn't all ups. He did make a few films that didn't quite come off the way he hoped. And at one point, he became a kind of expatriate in Europe, like traveling through Europe, making films in Europe, like Orson did, like some of the other guys did. Billy Friedkin had his down days. Oskar has his period. He refers to it as his days in the desert, and we have a piece of music that I commissioned that sounds a lot like Lawrence of Arabia, as we show Oskar in the desert. Sort of like Jesus in a way.
Yeah, I remember the scene.
So and he goes to try to find his career again, as people often do in Europe. So and we fortunately have a lot going on with the film in Europe. So I think cinema buffs, anybody European, especially anybody French, I would think would really like this film. Anybody who has ever worked with Lars von Trier or been hollered at by Lars von Trier, I think would appreciate this film. I don't know. He's probably very sweet. Anybody who's an intern, anybody working for no money in Los Angeles would enjoy it. They'd understand it in terms of the industry. Anyone at CA or William Morris. Am I touching on enough categories?
Yeah, no. I mean, they definitely. I definitely agree with you. There's a lot of good history there. I mean, that's what I was struck by, is that today's independent filmmakers, they're in their 20s and maybe 30s, so their film history doesn't often go past the 80s sometimes, and there's a whole world of cinema that happened.
Absolutely. Oskar Knight is born in the start of the 1900s. He comes out to L.A. He came out to L.A. In the early 20s, and Rudolph Martin, another one of the wonderful actors who was in the picture, as himself, which Rudolph is every day. Actually, among the great things about Rudolph Martin is he often, he doesn't always, but he often has played assassins. He's been an assassin on 24, on CSI, I believe he was kind of a baddie, and in Swordfish he was a terrorist. He's like the nicest guy in the world. He actually went to we shared a dentist, actually. He went to the same dentist, and the dentist would always tell me, he's so nice. And I would say, look at his films. He's not nice. This guy's a killer, But no, Rudolph is actually very nice, and has a great range. And he actually plays a homeless junkie in my film, Three Holes and a Smoking Gun, and is terrific in that film. So anyways, in Oskar Knight, he took, because Oskar Knight originally hails from Germany, as does Rudolph. He talks about the early days, what it's like when you're a European actor, a foreign actor coming to America, and he marvels at the fact that Oskar Knight was directing the first day he got here. The first day that he got to LA, he got a directing gig, because it was that wide open. Okay. I mean, and Oskar Knight Jr. See, Oskar Knight's son. We wanted to portray him, and he's played by Alex Bell, a brilliant young actor, who I always think of is the non-Australian Russell Crowe, Alex Bell. And so as Oskar Knight Jr., he tried to capture what Oskar Knight Jr., really is like. I don't know if he actually met Oskar Knight Jr., but he tried to capture what he's like. And he talks about, what he said became the the caption or tagline for the film. That's just the way it was back then.
Okay.
Because then they had Ciro's. Now we have Yoshinoya. I rest my case. It's just a different. Now Yoshinoya, you can't beat the Beef Bowl, but it's a different world. It's just a world that's gone. You've got to go looking for it with a flashlight now, and that's what the film is about in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Now, tell me a little bit. There was some really good interplay between, like, you had these interviews, and then you would have, I guess there were recreations of some of his films.
Put it this way, I'll leave it to viewers to decide how we accomplish that. We either license them at a great fee from Warner Brothers, big fee at Warner Brothers. We went to, went to them, or we recreated them ourselves with our paltry but creative elements. You can decide when you see them, but I'm very proud of those. There's one scene that actually looks a lot like the courtroom in To Kill a Mockingbird, and Eric Richardson, who actually makes a career out of impersonating Gregory Peck. He does Gregory Peck, Dean Martin, and a few other great guys. He is suited up in that great, white suit that Gregory Peck wore as Atticus Finch in Kill a Mockingbird.
And that's one of the scenes that I definitely, stood out to me, that I was like, oh, that's...
Yeah, it looks so real. I mean, he's so, but in this case, it was in the courtroom's empty, so he's addressing an empty courtroom. It's rather surreal, sort of fighting for the case of Oskar Knight to win an Oscar. So he turns to the empty jury box and says, ladies and gentlemen of the Academy. And, if there's any moments in this film where you're going to reach for a hanky, I think that's one of them, because it's Eric, he really brought it home, because Oscar worked hard, made lots of films, was nominated more than anyone in history. And like I said, you'll see what happened. But now, with the movie, since it's been completed, we are signed with Intellect Pictures. Actually, it's a pretty cool situation. They're really cool. It's a non-exclusive distribution deal, so they have lots of plans for us. But if I'm approached by other people for available platforms and rights, I'm still open to things as well, which is excellent. Sure. But they have lots of plans for it. One of the things they do is they present something called the World International Film Festival, also known as WIFF, W-I-F-F. The World International Film Festival, which is on Without a Box and Film Freeway. They are an around-the-world film festival tour. So if a film is selected, the film can wind up in several different cities, getting a screening in several different cities, all in the course of 1 year. So it's a moving film festival.
Oh, okay.
And that's, you see, I think that was fan email coming right in my inbox. Anyways, I think it's Paul Gregory. It was probably so. So WIFF has all these film festivals. We were accepted. We are one of their primary selections, it seems. So we've already been seen at the Singapore World International Film Festival. Okay. We were shown on April 14th at the Los Angeles World International Film Festival. That was actually at the Crest Westwood Theater. I don't know if you know LA much, but it's a beautiful old theater. It's been around for decades. Now they host special events, screenings, so they have like frequent fan screenings of True Romance. Actually, they had a True Romance kind of like anniversary there, and Michael Rappaport was there in person to talk about the movie. It's just great events. Sure. And they showed an early screening of Papa, which was the Giovanni Ribisi film about Hemingway. So they had a week of the L.A. World International Film Festival, and Near Myth, the Oskar Knight Story was the closing night film there. And I had been telling you in our emails, John, I'm very excited to mention that, yes, there will be a theatrical release later in the year, but for people to see our film sooner, it will be showing, grab a pen and paper, or grab your phone, 8 p.m. on Thursday night, July 28th. That's 8 p.m. Thursday night, July 28th, at the Bowtie Chelsea Cinema in Manhattan. And the Bowtie Chelsea Cinemas is where they have the Tribeca Film Festival. Sure. So if Robert De Niro fell asleep, he might wake up in the middle of my film now. Where am I? And he'll see all that old time stuff, and he'll really be like disoriented.
Right. Yeah. So you said it's going to get a theatrical release later this year.
That's the plan. In the meantime, it's going to be among the cities that the World International Film Festival will be showing Near Myth, the Oskar Knight Story, one screening apiece in these different cities.
Okay.
Well, it includes New York, Toronto, London, Amsterdam, Hong Kong, Singapore, Reykjavik. I'm hoping for a big turnout in Reykjavik. And it'll be back in LA, actually, sometime the week of October 14th to 20th, back at the Crest Theater. So anybody who didn't get to see it this time at the Crest, the 14th to 20th in October, Crest Theater, go to their website, get a ticket, get in line, and we'll probably have a Q&A. We had a Q&A last time. In fact, I'm sure we will. So there are lots of festival action. We also, actually, not only we, but I won an award. I won a directing award at the Hollywood Real Independent Film Festival back in February. What did they call it? The Breakthrough Director Spotlight Award.
Oh, nice.
Which now this gave me mixed feelings. I mean, I was really appreciative and very moved by getting that award for them. But seeing that Oscar worked so hard, to try, win something, and I won something the first time out, I felt a little guilty, because it's. But so I felt like I had won, not only for all the other nominees as one always does, but I felt it was for Oscar.
Sure. Yeah.
So I should send my award to Braunschweig, because that's where Oskar Knight was born, in Braunschweig, Germany, July 4th, 1900.
Nice. Put it on make a little statue out of it.
Yes, I hope so.
All right. So, what do you want people to come away from with this film? Ultimately, what's the message?
Go rent more old movies. Check out Jimmy Stewart, somebody named Humphrey Bogart, a man named Orson Welles, the early work of Jeff Bridges. It just, don't just love the present, and hopefully, don't just love the present. Appreciate the past, and then use what you can learn from all that great stuff in the past to try to make an even better future, including in movies and cinema.
Well, speaking of that, so what could today's independent filmmakers, like the young guys coming up, the young ladies coming up, what can they learn from maybe the experience you went through, like not just this movie in particular, but the stick-to-itiveness, I suppose, of pushing this through, taking, like you said, you took quite a while to kind of see your dream fully realized. So what's some advice that maybe you could give to somebody who's got kind of an idea for a story, but they don't know how to go forward?
Well, I could tell you. Well, here's the question: do you want me to tell you the things that they tell you not to talk about? Well, of course you do, because those are the things that will be helpful.
Right.
What I will say is this. These things seem true to me. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
They seem true to me. If you make a film that's not SAG, you're not going to be able to use actors that many people have ever heard of. I suppose there are probably some non-SAG actors in theater who have a degree of reputation, maybe particularly geographically. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, anyone's ever heard of is SAG. So, unfortunately, you need to have enough money to be able to go SAG. Not unfortunate. It costs what it costs, but
right.
You can't make a movie for $500 and hire Matthew McConaughey. It's just not going to work.
Sure.
Even if he wanted it to. So just the requirement of the situation is that you have to have enough money that you can go SAG if you want to hire actors that anyone's ever heard of. And the reason to want to do that is because distributors, for the most part, really only want to hear about movies that involve actors you ever heard of. And, you wish it wasn't that way, and that there was more of a ready market for films starring unknowns. And there's room for that and a life for that, which we'll talk about in a bit. But just looking at what kind of odds you want to have stacked against you as you start. If you do a movie that is SAG and you can get you know, one, I mean, not just one actor who SAG. I mean, there are many actors who were SAG that distributors unfortunately won't care about either. It's a very, sort of relentless process. The way they look at things. But if you can manage to get one person who has some kind of cachet, you make a low budget movie for $100,000 and you get Frances McDormand to do it, or you get John Hawkes to do something. Well, I don't know if we'll do a film for 100,000 at 100,000 budget, but you do a $1 million film and you manage to somehow get it to John Hawkes and he does the picture. It's a whole different, it's an alternate universe where now your film can be successful. So it's just very hard to get a film seen in, with any degree of expansiveness if you don't have some, one or two SAG actors that anybody's heard of. And then beyond that, actors who distributors find to have value. Mm-hmm. So if you decide that you can't afford that or can't manage to get those actors on board, through the process of submitting the degree of money they want, all those issues, or you simply don't care, then it's just, I think, a matter of repositioning your brain to what is going to be involved. It means you will be very indie. You will be going after the venues that are more welcoming to indie films. You may get spottier distribution or no official distribution, just occasional screenings. But, look, the movie Diner made years ago, I mean, I guess those guys weren't unknowns, but they weren't super famous. There have been films throughout the years where it was an ensemble of people who hadn't done that much that was known by the general public. And because of a movie, they hit that great tripwire and suddenly everybody's career blew up. So you could do an ensemble film with a bunch of actors who nobody has heard of, and you do a great movie. There's that chance. There is, statistically a chance that Fox Searchlight, if they ever get to see it, is going to love it, or that you'll work your way up through the festivals, or find some other way to bring attention to it, or just be happy you did it, and the people who see it, and you understand the limitations. But I think that, the second part of the answer to that question is, I think for indie filmmakers, once a movie's done, you have to do the same thing that, Batman does, which is promote. Well, no, Batman doesn't promote. He's just Batman. But they do for Batman.
Right.
He's got that beam in the sky. People know about him. But in terms of the film, like, Ben Affleck did Batman. No. Tell me no. Yes. So in order to sort of like deal with all that, you got to promote. Of course, it was wonderful that he did that. So, but promotion is so important for indie films, and many filmmakers are not as at home with that. They are more creative souls who just, you could be creative in publicity, but maybe they're more solitary individuals. They want to be on a set, not a TV set being interviewed or whatever. But finding a way, finding people to work with you who can kind of, just stay the course through that next phase of the film's life. Because when the movie's done, in a way, now's where it starts. Because if anybody's ever going to hear about your movie, you've got to let the world know about it. And, there's so many films and so many things vying for everybody's attention that if you don't do something to bring yourself above the waterline, you'll be below the waterline. So I hope that's a good answer to your question.
No, that's some excellent stuff. I totally agree with a lot of that. What I found remarkable about you is that, when I started talking to you, I forget exactly how I found your film. I believe it was on Twitter. And we started talking, and, it just comes through that you believe in your movie. There's a passion, even though we were only speaking through emails, which obviously is a limitation, that I can't hear the passion in your voice, but it comes through. When you speak about your movie, when you're trying to promote it, and so to your point of getting out there promoting your film, I think that's a big thing to have, to let people see that passion. It's advised a lot of times that this is that your movie's just a product, and you have to, but it's product. It's also art. And so, I really want to see something that somebody's passionate about, because obviously if you're putting that passion in now when you're marketing it, then you must have had something that you're putting into the making of the film.
Well, again, a lot of it is, just goes back to Oscar himself. I mean, we love what he stood for, and the fact that he just never quit. Okay, so he's nominated, he loses. He's nominated, he loses. Like Leo, like so many of these great people, like Martin Scorsese. I think when Martin Scorsese sees this film, he's going to cry. He's just going to cry because it's going to remind him of the many years up until The Departed that he never won. Right. Actually, in our movie, Christina Anapau, the lovely Christina Anapau from True Blood, Black Swan, she tells a story of how when she worked on Black Swan, Natalie Portman would stand in front of the mirror and say, "Don't be like Oskar Knight, don't be like Oskar Knight." And Christina Anapau actually tells that story in our film. And then she says when Natalie won her Oscar, she was at the Oscars next to Jon Voight, and Christina says she heard Jon Voight say, she broke the Oskar Knight curse. So it was great seeing people like Christina Anapau in our film telling these insider stories about, how people feel about the Oscars and how they felt about Oskar Knight, his near miss, David Suchet played Inspector Poirot on Masterpiece Theater for like over 25 years. Great, great actor. And he's interviewed in our film. He's another one who obviously Oscar's career meant a lot to him. And whom I'm leaving out some great people. Randall Batinkoff, lovely Juliana Guil, who is in Friday 13th remake, Divorce Girl's Guide to Divorce or something. She's in a great series. Girl's Guide to Divorce. She's on that series now. Maya Stang from XXXY with Mark Ruffalo. Noel Neill, who was Lois Lane in the original Superman series. She's in our film talking about Oskar Knight. And John Provost, who was Timmy opposite Lassie. So just tell me who's not in this film.
Right. Well, I mean, one of the lines that really stood out was the people love movies and they always will. And I think...
that's Lawrence Pressman. Okay, that's who also was in this film. Lawrence Pressman. Deborah Miller is his manager. As you'll notice, I just mentioned Lawrence Pressman. Now, Lawrence is terrific. He was in the Hellstrom Chronicle back in the day. He's been in American Pie, American Wedding. And he's his appearances throughout the film, his interviews, they always reminded me of the narrator in Our Town. There's something. I mean, he's done a lot of stage, and so he is sort of like the voice of wisdom, weighing in at intervals. And then toward the end of the movie, he has that statement about, people love movies and they always will. Yeah. And it has a very Thornton Wilder kind of feeling to it. Larry's great.
Yeah, it was really towards the end of the film, right? That line.
Yeah, and, it's really near the end of it.
It was a great way to go out. I felt, it really wrapped up the movie nicely. I was like, wow, this is, it's a really nice sentiment.
Well, thanks. Well, I'd like a chance to talk just a little to you about one or two of my other films.
Sure.
So, some of the people out there could check them out.
Yeah.
And some of the people in the movies can not email me about not talking about them. And no, these are very exciting. So, last year a film came out called 3 Holes in a Smoking Gun. 3 Holes in a Smoking Gun, previously titled 3 Holes, 2 Brads in a Smoking Gun. Now, that was the original title. And then there was all this talk with the distributor that they wouldn't know what brads are in North Korea or something.
Okay, sure.
They might even cause an international incident. What is this? Are brads nuclear weapons? Or what is this? But so they took the brad. So the brads came out and the pages fell to the floor, and then we reassembled it as 3 Holes in a Smoking Gun. But I'll know what the title always really was. But anyways, it's called 3 Holes in a Smoking Gun, and it's a really pretty cool picture. I did not direct it. It was directed by a wonderful director named Hilarion Banks. Hilarion has a great eye, shot a great picture in that film. And what it's about is basically a disenchanted screenwriter. I have no idea where I got that idea. No idea. A disenchanted screenwriter his move to New York and is teaching an evening class in screenwriting, where he winds up in a battle of wits with a devious screenwriter student. And the teacher is played by James Wilder. Mm-hmm. James truly knocks it out of the park with this. I know a lot of people remember him from Melrose Place and Models Inc. and about 100 other movies. James had reached the point where he was being very selective in the last few years. He didn't want to do the same old thing. I got lucky that he wanted to do this and gave his all to it. He's won a number of Best Actor awards for the picture. I won a Best Screenwriter award for it, which didn't hurt. Anyways, he was terrific. And opposite him, interestingly, was a first-time actor named Zuhair Khan. Zuhair's out of New York, which is where we shot most of the film. There's an LA sequence, but it's mainly an NYC film. Okay. For all you NYC guys. Sure. And Zuhair plays this student who's like a street kid who ostensibly, you wouldn't expect him to turn in anything, it would necessarily bowl the teacher over. And to James Wilder's dismay, this character Bobby Blue Day, he reads the script and it's the best thing he's ever read. And he's horrified because he's sort of like left the business and he's a kid off the streets of New York turning in something better than he's ever done. So he decides to get in on the action. And, I hope for all those taking screenwriting at Columbia, you don't have that happen with your teachers. That they just they come in and say, let me help you rewrite it and give me half the credit. But that's what James Wilder's character does. Right. And it leads to all kinds of intrigue. And I actually would compare this a little bit to like Sleuth about screenwriting, because it's very like mano a mano, two characters. But I added some other characters Sleuth didn't have. I mean, it's not Sleuth, but it's that kind of like two-hander in that it's like you've got two characters at the center of it. Right. But Joaquin de Almeida and Rudolph Martin, who were both in Near Myth: The Oskar Knight Story, are also in Three Holes in the Smoking Gun. Howard McNair is in both those films as well. Howard's a British actor who's terrific. And who else was in that? We had Rebecca May Palmer, we had Kara Silverman, we had Matt Cable, and that's the cast. And you could see it on Amazon. It's in video. It's on DVD, and it's ITN distribution, and it's really pretty cool picture.
Great, yeah, we'll have to check that out.
And the other film I wanted to talk about is a film that meant a lot to me and my writing partner on it when we did it. It's called American Real. And American Real I co-wrote with just one of the best writers I've ever known. His name's Junior Burke, and he's also had a rather significant career as a singer-songwriter, initially in the Midwest and then later in New York, and now he works out of Colorado. He has a number of albums out. He has albums out under the name Junior Burke and under the name Tom Bishop, Thom. Tom's a great writer and singer-songwriter, and we wrote this film, American Real, about a singer-songwriter who makes it late in life. And thanks to Ali Sheedy, Ali was going to do the picture. She ultimately wasn't available and wasn't able to do it, but nonetheless, she gave the script to David Carradine to help get it made, and David read it and instantly wanted to do it. David had a great quote. He said, after he read it, this script is basically my life as it would have been if I'd been a musician instead of an actor, which maybe I should have been. And that's what David said. And David played a lot of his own songs in the picture, and also sang and performed some songs by Junior Burke as well. So I co-wrote it with Junior Burke, and then he added music, some songs to the film. And it's a really cool picture. And that's also available on Amazon and instant video. It's on DVD from MVD. And honestly, I do think that both of those pictures are acquiring more and more of a reputation. I mean, Three Holes is pretty new, and that's growing. But American Real was actually shown as part of something called Under the Sheet Music, which was an outdoor film retrospective in downtown LA in Pershing Square, across from the Biltmore Hotel. And it was 10 films through the summer about the music business and musicians, including Stop Making Sense and Buena Vista Social Club. And they selected American Reel among them. But seriously, I hope that if you're in New York or a neighboring state, you're in Maryland, it's 7 o'clock, hit the gas, you can get to the Bowtie Chelsea Cinema by 8, go straight through the Lincoln Tunnel or whatever. I don't even know how to describe it. But head over to the Bowtie Chelsea Cinema, 8 p.m., Thursday, July 28th. Be careful not to sit on Robert De Niro if he's in there snoring. And check out our film. Otherwise, fly to Amsterdam to see it sometime in November, see it in LA in October, and then, seriously, there should be a theatrical release of Near Myth, the Oskar Knight Story in LA and New York later this year, and then probably some other parts of the country as well, through Intellect Pictures.
So, Scott, if people want to learn more about the film or if they want to reach you, how can they find you online?
If people want to reach me about Near Myth, the Oskar Knight Story, or any of my other projects, they could just go to Facebook and look up Near Myth, the Oskar Knight Story. Visit us, like us, follow us, message us. I have a personal Facebook page for Scott Fivelson. Or if you really want to reach me, my email is infojet@earthlink.net.
Great. Sounds like people will be able to find you pretty easily. I want to once again thank Scott Fivelson for being part of the Indie Film NYC podcast. It was really a fun time talking with him about his film, Near Myth, the Oskar Knight Story. For me, what I like about Scott is his passion and desire to tell this story comes through very strongly when he talks about his work. And I hope it's a good lesson for young indie filmmakers out there that having a great script or film is just the first step. If you really want to get your work out there, you have to communicate to people in multiple ways and have it come across that you're excited about this story, because your excitement will rub off and will get viewers excited to get out there and watch your movie. So thanks again, and we hope you're really enjoying the Indie Film NYC podcast. The podcast is available on both iTunes and Stitcher. So if this podcast is interesting or useful to you, then please subscribe. And if you can give us a rating and review, that would be even better, because it will help more people find us and spread the word. And of course, please check out the other blog posts and filmmaking information that's available on our growing website, indiefilmnyc.com. And thanks for listening.